3.6 billion years ago, GA, the first continental nucleus, the birth of the Wyoming Craton. Event. This is the age of the very oldest dated crustal material found in the United States. Location. Within the Wyoming Craton, which today underlies most of Wyoming and parts of Montana, South Dakota, and northern Colorado. What happened? Intense mantle melting beneath the thin, primitive oceanic crust generated rising blobs of magma, plutons. These blobs, rich in silica, cooled slowly deep underground to form the first slivers of felsic, granitic, crust. This process is called cratonization. Evidence. Ancient zircon crystals dated to 3.6-3.8 GA have been found in much younger sedimentary rocks in the Beartooth Mountains, Wyoming/Montana. These resilient zircons are the only surviving evidence, as the original rock they crystallized in has long since been eroded away or recycled. 3.60, 3.55 GA. Event description. Initial separation of mafic crust from the mantle in a plume-dominated environment, forming precursors to continental nuclei. This marks the onset of sialic, silica-rich, crust differentiation from basaltic sources. Location/region. Wyoming Craton, northern Wyoming province, including precursors to Beartooth Mountains. Key details and implications. Earliest evidence from detrital zircons and isotopic signatures, e.g., unradiogenic Nd and later gneisses indicating Eoarchean antecedents. Represents a global-style hotspot, magmatism before widespread subduction. 3.6, 3.5 billion years ago. Formation of early crust in Wyoming, Wyoming Craton. Rocks in the Beartooth Mountains and Wind River Range, Wyoming, date to this time, preserving fragments of granitoid gneisses, ancient continental crust. These rocks are among the oldest in North America, signaling that continental nuclei had stabilized. Hydrothermal systems around volcanic arcs likely supported microbial mats. Early microbial life. Stromatolite-like structures are recorded from this age worldwide, e.g., Australia, South Africa, and though U.S. direct fossil evidence is sparse, similar conditions in Wyoming greenstone belts suggest microbial life may have thrived in shallow seas here too. 3.55, 3.52 GA. Event description. Crystallization of the oldest tonalitic gneisses, signaling the first major TTG magmatism from partial melting of hydrated mafic crust. These gray, banded gneisses form the basement for later intrusions. Location/region. Minnesota River Valley, Morton Gneiss, near Morton, Minnesota. Key details and implications. Dated at 3524 plus or minus 9 Ma via shrimp UPB zircon analysis. Rock types, tonalite with quartz, plagioclase, and biotite. Indicates early continental stabilization amid volcanic arcs or plumes. 3.50, 3.49 GA. Event description. Formation of granodioritic gneisses through further TTG sweet magmatism, possibly involving remelting of earlier crust. These units show complex zoning and are interleaved with amphibolites, metabasalts. Location/region. Minnesota River Valley, Montevideo Gneiss. Sites near Montevideo and Granite Falls, Minnesota. Key details and implications. Ages, 3,485 plus or minus 10 Ma, Montevideo, and 3,497 plus or minus 9 Ma, Granite Falls. Geochemistry suggests derivation from garnet-bearing basaltic sources at depth 30-40 km. Early paragneisses, metasediments, may derive from erosion of these units, with detrital zircons peaking at 3.52 GA and 3.48 GA. 3.50, 3.45 GA. Event description. Exposure of the oldest TTG gneisses in the northern Wyoming province, representing juvenile crustal addition via partial melting of lower mafic crust. Detrital zircons and later quartzites confirm sources this old. Location/region. Wyoming Craton, northern Wyoming province, scattered in Bighorn and Wind River ranges. Key details and implications. Ages 3.5-3.6 Ga for exposed TTG. HF isotopes in zircons indicate plume-like origins with minimal recycling. Covers 200,000 km superscript 2 of protocraton by this time. 3.4 billion years ago. Greenstone belts in the Superior Province, Minnesota/Wisconsin. Part of the Superior Craton extends into present-day Minnesota and northern Wisconsin. Volcanic sedimentary belts, mafic lavas, pillow basalts, banded iron formations, formed in small ocean basins. These basalts record early seafloor volcanism and provide chemical evidence for microbial iron metabolism. Banded iron formations, BFs, deposits in Minnesota, part of the Inimiki Basin, may have roots in Paleoarchean processes as iron-oxidizing bacteria began producing ferric iron in localized oxygen oases. 3.3 Ga. Greenstone Belt Formation and Volcanic Arcs. Event: the formation of greenstone belts, stacked sequences of volcanic and sedimentary rocks that represent the most ancient stable crust. Location: the Superior Craton, today exposed in Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, and parts of Canada, and continued development in the Wyoming Craton. What happened? Volcanism: massive outpourings of mafic, basaltic, lava from fissures and volcanoes created thick layers of basalt. These eruptions occurred underwater, as the entire planet was likely covered by a global ocean with only small, emergent volcanic islands. Sedimentation: in between eruptions, sediments, volcanic ash, silica, and the first chemical precipitates like banded iron formations settled on the seafloor. Microcontinent accretion: these volcanic plateaus and primitive island arcs collided with and accreted, stuck, to the growing nucleus of the cratons, making them larger and thicker. This was a key process in building the first stable continents. Evidence: the Minnesota River Valley gneiss terrain and the ancient gneiss complex contain rocks metamorphosed from these original volcanic and sedimentary sequences. The famous Morton gneiss, or rainbow gneiss, of Minnesota, one of the oldest rocks in the U.S. at 3.5 Ga, originated during this time. 3.40 Ga. Event description: igneous crystallization of layered gneisses, tonalite and granodiorite orthogneises, marking episodic magmatism in a potentially arc-like setting. Inherited zircons suggest recycling of 3.6 Ga crust. Location/region: Wyoming Craton, Granite Mountains, Central WY. Key details and implications. UPB dates: 3.45 to 3.33 Ga. Geochemical signatures: LAL enrichment, negative EU anomalies, HFSE depletion, consistent with hydrous melting in a protosubduction zone. Forms large tracts of basement. 3.37 Ga. Event description: major pulse of granodiorite intrusions into existing gneisses, contributing to crustal thickening. This reflects widespread TTG sweet magmatism across the craton. Location/region: Minnesota River Valley, intrusions into Morton and Montevideo gneisses, and Wyoming Craton, Northern Province. Key details and implications. Minnesota, 3370 plus or minus 8 Ma. Morton, and 3385 plus or minus 8 Ma. Montevideo. Wyoming, part of 3.4 Ga onset of subduction-influenced crust production, with monzodiorites and granites. Indicates transition to more organized tectonics. 3.3 billion years ago. Wyoming granite, greenstone terrains. Evidence of volcanic island arcs and subduction-like processes, suggesting plate tectonics may have begun operating. Granite intrusions stabilized crust, helping form the Wyoming Craton as a long-lived continental core. Possible microbial mats. Sedimentary layers in greenstone belts suggest shallow water microbial ecosystems similar to stromatolites. These would have trapped sediments and contributed to carbonate deposits. 3.33 Ga. Event description: early high-grade metamorphism amphibolite to granulite facies, affecting gneissic terrains, possibly due to crustal thickening or delamination. Detrital zircons and metasediments record this as a source peak. Location/region: Minnesota River Valley, Montevideo gneiss at Granite Falls, and Wyoming Craton, Beartooth Mountains precursors. Key details and implications. Minnesota, metamorphic event between 3300 to 3350 Ma. Wyoming, 3.33 Ga orthogneiss crystallization in granite mountains. Xenocrystic cores at 3.2 Ga in later rocks hint at reworking. PT conditions, 700 degrees C, 6 to 8 kbar, 20-25 km depth. 3.33 Ga. Event description: establishment of a stable proto-craton spanning much of the Wyoming region, with sialic crust resisting later destruction. This includes interleaved TTG gneisses and amphibolites. Location/region: Wyoming Craton, from Oregon Trail structural belt to Great Falls tectonic zone. Key details and implications. By Ca 3.3 Ga, a 200,000 km superscript 2 cratonic block existed, based on isotopic and geophysical data. Marks a key stabilization event before Mesoarchean overprinting. 3.2 billion years ago. Crustal growth and stabilization. The Wyoming Craton fully crystallized as one of Earth's earliest continental building blocks. It later became central to the North American cratonic core, Laurentia. Supercontinent seeds forming. The Wyoming Craton, along with the Superior Province and Canadian Shield, began assembling into larger continental masses. These would eventually participate in early supercratons like Volbara or UR. 3.20 Ga. Event description: climax of Paleoarchean crust formation, protracted TTG and granite magmatism, producing voluminous orthogneisses. Partial melting of mafic undercrust in a sagduction or early subduction model. Metasupercrustal deposition, quartzites, turbidites, in tectonically quiet basins, with detrital zircons from 3.6 to 3.2 Ga sources. Location/region: Wyoming Craton, widespread, e.g., Beartooth Mountains TTG pendants, Wind River Range migmatites, and Minnesota River Valley, minor late events. Key details and implications. Wyoming, major event 3.4 to 3.2 Ga, peaks at 3.3 to 3.2 Ga, forming gray TTG gneisses, 3.5 to 3.1 Ga crystallization overall, 3.2 Ga migmatite in Wind River. Detrital zircons and Beartooth quartzites up to 3.96 Ga, but dominant 3.3 to 3.2 Ga processes. Episodic plumes/subduction hybrid, leading to thick, 40 km, crust. Minnesota, less intense, but paragneiss detrital peaks at 3.38 Ga and 3.14 Ga. 3.2 Ga. Major crustal addition in the algominerogeny, early phase. Event: a major period of continental growth and tectonic collision known as an orogeny, mountain building event. Location: primarily the Superior Craton. What happened? A significant volcanic arc terrain collided with the growing edge of the Superior Craton. This collision smashed and folded the existing greenstone belts, buried rocks deep underground, metamorphosing them into gneiss and schist under immense heat and pressure, generated enormous amounts of new granitic magma that intruded upwards, stitching the colliding pieces together and adding significant volume and strength to the craton. This process is called continental accretion. Evidence: this event is recorded in the Great Lakes region. Rocks in the Minnesota River Valley and the Watersmeet Dome in Michigan show clear signs of this intense deformation and metamorphism around 3.2 Ga. End of the Paleoarchean, 3.2 Ga, the geological legacy. By the end of the era, the region held two significant, stable continental nuclei. The Wyoming Craton, a stable block of crust that would remain a coherent entity for billions of years, eventually becoming the bedrock of the northwestern U.S. The Superior Craton, a larger, more mature craton that had undergone significant growth through accretion. It would become the heart of the North American continent, Laurentia. These cratons were not part of a large continent, but were likely isolated land masses or part of a larger, unknown supercraton, surrounded by a global ocean. They provided the first durable, buoyant foundations upon which all subsequent geological history of North America would be built. 3.14 GA. Event description. Late mafic intrusions, amphibolites, and associated high-grade metamorphism, overprinting earlier gneisses. This may reflect mantle upwelling or rifting at craton margins. Location/region. Minnesota River Valley, Montevideo gneiss at Granite Falls. Key details and implications. Mafic intrusion at 3,141 plus or minus 2 ma. Metamorphic rims on zircons at 3,140 ma. Indicates dynamic late Paleoarchean tectonics before craton-wide quiescence.